What's up, everybody? It's Will here, and I'm here in this bright, beautiful day next to this incredible forest behind me. I know there's no trees, but it happens sometimes. To tell you how you can turn your biggest frustrations into advantages. So this might seem like, oh, that's impossible. That's not practical. Oh, you're just going to shoot out some abstract concepts and it's not really you can't apply it to real life. That's not true. I'm going to give you specific examples that anyone can use, and I'll give you specific stories to show you how they're used. So let's start with the first story. So here's a common frustration that you might have, that I've had. So sometimes you've probably experienced this if you've been in this world for a decent while. You're at some restaurant or some type of business. It could be a restaurant, a store, and the people there are just really difficult. They're not trying at all. And you come out frustrated. Maybe they're really mean to you, or maybe they're just really difficult. They don't really care, and it's frustrating. I know one time I was a potential customer, hungry customer that could have spent money at a location, and I was asking about information. That time it was a martial arts studio, and they had all these different types of martial arts that they taught, and the person was just like not into it. There's language barrier there, and on top of that, they were not interested at really giving me any information. They were just like, oh yeah, you can find it yourself, and they're very vague about everything. They're like, oh yeah, you can find us on our website, and they wouldn't even like specifically tell me what website it was. They wouldn't tell me what classes they offered, what times they were available. I brought up the fact that their website was broken, and just like your online calendar isn't right. And it was a bit of a mess. Now, sometimes salespeople sell too hard, and they're like trying to force you to buy down their throat and too enthusiastic, and they'll give you all their numbers and push you to buy. But sometimes the opposite is true. They let sales slip by being lazy like this. And so it was frustrating for me. And so I could have done what I do in a lot of situations similar to this, which is I could have just let those frustrations build up, and nothing productive would have been accomplished outside of feeling very frustrated. But I chose to look at it from a different mindset, a different belief, and it helped me get ahead, succeed more in life. How was that possible? Well, it's very simple. All I did was I thought, you know what, if this person can get this job and their business is fairly thriving despite the language barrier and the laziness, that means that I don't have to beat myself up about being perfect. If I'm enthusiastic and if I do all these other things, I'll be ahead because some of my competition is shooting themselves in the foot. They're not even trying. It's a great reminder that I don't have to always compare myself to the best of the best, because, some of my competitors are literally self-sabotaging themselves. And this is kind of played out numerous times in my life, especially with language barriers. If you've lived in the US throughout my life, there's been many times throughout the years where a language barrier has frustrated me. And although I speak pretty good American English, my parents didn't. They were immigrants, and of course, there's plenty of immigrants here. And I remember another time, basically I was just parking my car, and this person, he was like the parking lot director or whatever, and he was just incredibly rude. And there are good parking lot directors as well. I've encountered some of them, but some of them are just like incredibly rude. And this person, you couldn't understand a word he said because his English was that bad. And yet he was, getting mad at me for not understanding, like it was my fault. And he was basically telling me like, you have to go forward, and I was already going forward, so it didn't make sense. So I ended up just getting really frustrated, rolling up my window and moving forward like I was already doing, and then I just left the parking lot. So it frustrated me for longer than it should have, and instead, if I could have done it again, I would have looked at it from a different perspective and said, you know what, if that guy with his accent and his English, or lack of English, can make it in this world and, survive without starvation, then look at my English, it's not perfect, but it's better than his, and I can communicate and I can engage. And, I could have done, looking at all these situations, I could have done better than all these other people by communicating better, being more enthusiastic, listening to that person, and being specific in my answers. I can get ahead more. So rather than looking at it and getting angry at other people, it's a inspiration to show that, I can, there's hope for me to push beyond there. So those are just how I've decided to look at things. There's actually probably other ways you can look at things to push yourself even further. And one of the big inspirations for this whole topic of this video came from Napoleon Hill. This guy spent his whole life studying the richest people in the world thanks to his connections with Andrew Carnegie. And of course, he learned a lot of things by studying these people in person for so long. And he wrote these books about the laws of wealth, how anyone can get rich. And they're very specific, detailed rules, and that's kind of one of the problems. Everyone who reads the book, they don't actually bother to do the laws or the techniques specifically and as detailed as he mentions them in the book, which is why they don't improve. But one of the things he says in the book is behind every obstacle, tragedy, or frustration, there's an equal, if not greater, opportunity there. And for me, for a long time, I was a bit skeptical about this because it's sometimes very hard to see any opportunity with your misfortune. Maybe it's something big, like you don't have any money or connections or education. How can that be a bigger opportunity? Or maybe it's the fact that you're worse off in every way than other people. I think that's one for me in my past. I just thought, you know what? I have a lot of difficulty with a lot of areas of my life. I'm not the most physically fit. I'm below average. I'm really skinny. I'm not the most attractive looking, blah, 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 blah. But behind all those opportunities, you just gotta, it took a while, maybe many months, if not a year, for me to really think about it and figure out any types of opportunities behind it. But one thing I found after studying Will Smith is that the lack of those things has pushed me and motivated me beyond those people who had those things. It's kind of like a spoiled child versus a child who develops a hunger to succeed through the motivation of poverty. And so I think one opportunity that has arisen is I'm more motivated and energized, and I want to succeed more because I'm not as good looking or as socially fluent naturally. Because those people, because it comes so naturally, they take it for granted and use it as a crutch. And Will Smith's the greatest example of this, because if you watch any of his motivational speeches or interviews, he says he doesn't consider himself better in any way except for his work ethic. There are people who are smarter than him, better looking, more socially fluent, more funny, but the one trait that he can beat everyone at is his work ethic. And first off, that's kind of funny because I think he's already pretty good looking and all this other stuff, but maybe he wasn't initially. And because of the fact that he wasn't better naturally, maybe he was more motivated to succeed in that way. And so see how this can play out in all these different areas. You know, I've been reading up on some blogs of successful entrepreneurs, and one blog post I recently read by this guy named Gary Bencivenega. He's a very successful marketing copywriter, which is like a type of like entrepreneur that's focused on generating sales through the written word. But he's a like CEO entrepreneur, and he said how he wrote this blog post on how he used Napoleon Hill's concept because his child was born mentally retarded. And so it was a horrible struggle, and he still admits that he would give it all up to have his child normal, but he chose to use that frustration as an opportunity by saying, you know what, because of my child's disabilities and, you know, seeing him grow up with this, I've become a more caring, understanding person. I've been able to see the world as a bigger, more open, equal place. I've been able to see the value in people in different ways rather than look down upon them, and see the value in every individual no matter how bad they are. And so he's chosen to use this you know, unfortunate circumstance where his child is born with these disabilities, and he's chose to look at it from a positive, productive side. And not everyone's willing to do that. And, you know, I think a lot of people do naturally have a negative, skeptical tendency. But you don't have to have that define your life. You don't have to have your genetics define your life, thanks to our conscious free will. So that's it. Again, this can be applied in many different ways. See how you can use it the most for your biggest struggles in life. You know, for me, of course, as I mentioned, it will help me improve the areas because I'm more motivated to improve those areas. And I'm blessed to have the ability to improve those areas. You can improve your fitness. You can look more muscular. So even if you're below average, you have that potential to become above average in a lot of areas. The same thing applies for emotional intelligence, social skills, charisma, and all those other things. And of course, I need improvement, and it's really tough to do. I'm not saying like it's easy. Like sometimes you want to feel better, but it's sometimes not gonna happen easily. For example, another situation, another quick story. You know, I was at this grocery store, and all of a sudden I realized I was being looked down upon because the people there treated me like a kid. I look like a kid, and they treated me like a kid, and they're just like, you know what, where's your dad? Where's your mother? How can you be buying groceries on your own? And you could see it in their behavior. And of course that frustrated me temporarily, maybe longer than it should. But you know, despite that, you kind of have to like change your mentality. And even when I did, my natural tendency was to stay angry or aggravated. So it's not easy to change these things, but I decided to look at the difference. Where's the opportunity in this? Where's the greater benefit? And of course, what I thought was, you know what? When I get old, I'm going to look really young because these people clearly think that I'm still a kid when I'm a lot older than they think they are. And I see that a lot, you know. So let's bring this back to making money. Not because that's the only way you can use this, but because all my examples so far have been on just like general life, rather than making money. I mean, I've touched on fitness and all these other things, but let's touch on making money real quick. Napoleon Hill originally created this concept for making money. So specifically for any type of person who's trying to make more money, you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur, but you can kind of see how this is used. For example, if someone's like really struggling to heat up their food, they have to start a fire every day. The opportunity in that, the problem, can be solved by a microwave, and therefore someone invented the microwave. Another huge problem is, of course, light bulbs. people struggled to read books and do things because as soon as the sun set, you couldn't see. And the fires and candles, they only kind of lit up the room. And thankfully, Thomas Edison saw the opportunity in that frustration and problem. And so that's kind of like, when you look at it, that's kind of where, you know, money is made. Money is made through the exchange of value. You know, some people say that like every type of business, every type of business that exists is a business that provides value, and the more value you produce, the more money you make. And I think that's it's on the right track, but a little bit too extremist and too naive. I think there's a lot of companies that produce value, but in the form of pleasure at the cost of your health. Coca-Cola, fast food companies, and so forth. So again, I think it's your moral and ethical choice, but sometimes you also want to make sure that you choose a form of value that actually completely helps that other person. Cigarette companies, again, pleasure, but at the cost of your health and your lifespan. And then there's other things like just looking at your own life, where there's all these problems out there, and then not just creating that value, but finding a way of making money from it too, because you can, you know, literally give away all the money in your bank and help people for free and volunteer, but a lot of people don't make a lot of money from it. You know, I'm sure you know someone who volunteers a lot, or you know, they spend all this extra time that they're not paid as a teacher delivering extra value. But I think it's not just giving value, but also finding a way to intelligently package that up and do it in a way where you get paid for it. So I think that's it for this video. Of course, if you just want to learn more, go read Napoleon Hill's books. He's written like 5 to 10 books, but like his magnus opus, like the A to Z guide to becoming rich, is The Laws of Success by Napoleon Hill. So I recommend that one. It's a bit of a long read, but it's shorter than Harry Potter, so it's not that bad actually. Thanks for watching, and I thank you again for, you know, consistently watching my videos, and of course I'll see you in the next video. And of course, watching them alone is not going to do anything unless you like actually take action on them. You can have all this like knowledge in your head, but if you do nothing with it, you're no better off. So I challenge you, not in an hour, not in 10 minutes, but right now, do something that will move you forward. Thanks for watching.